They forgot my seat at my mother-in-law's birthday in Rome. My husband joked, "Guess you don't belong at the table." I quietly walked out. Half an hour later, the staff started packing everything, the venue, food, and service. The laughter stopped instantly. 5 years ago, I was Anna Morgan, just Anna Morgan, running Elite Affairs, the go-to event planning company for Boston's high society. I'd clawed my way up from nothing, putting myself through business school, building a business that left my fingerprints on every major gala, corporate event, and society wedding in the city. My life was about creating perfection. Elegant venues, flawless menus, moments that made jaws drop. That's how I met Sean Caldwell at a charity gala I planned for Boston Children's Hospital. Picture this, a ballroom dripping in crystal chandeliers, me in my element, and this tall guy with dark hair and a smile that could charm the stars out of the sky. "You're the wizard behind all this," he said, gesturing at the room. I laughed it off, but his interest felt real. He wasn't just another rich guy throwing compliments, he saw me, or so I thought. Sean's family, the Caldwells, were Boston royalty, old money from shipping and railroads, the kind of wealth that didn't need to flex because it was just there. I started planning their events, and soon Sean and I were dating. There were red flags, sure. His mom, Eleanor, had this way of looking at me like I was a smudge on her antique silver. "Self-made success is so American," she'd say, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. I ignored it because I was falling for Sean. He seemed different, less obsessed with status, more grounded. When he proposed after 11 months, I said yes, even though something in my gut whispered I was stepping into a world that would never let me in. Our wedding was the event of the season, naturally. I planned most of it myself because, let's be honest, I didn't trust anyone else to get it right. Eleanor had notes on everything. The venue wasn't traditional enough, the menu too adventurous. I compromised where I could, held my ground where it mattered, and Sean played the peacemaker, never quite standing up to his mom. That should have been my first clue. After the wedding, the Caldwells' subtle digs turned into a full-on campaign to undermine me. They used my company for their events, but questioned every decision, changed plans last minute, and took credit for my ideas. At family dinners, my opinions were asked for and then ignored. "Anna has such a good eye for these things," Eleanor would say, patting my hand like I was a kid with a cute hobby. Sean would shrug it off later, saying that's just how she is. But it wasn't just her. It was personal, and it got worse. The chance to plan Eleanor's 70th birthday in Rome was supposed to be my big moment, a week-long extravaganza culminating in a Michelin-starred dinner overlooking the Colosseum. I threw myself into it, calling in every favor, securing every detail. But while I was planning, I started noticing cracks in the Caldwell facade. Payments for venues were delayed, vendors called about deposits. Sean brushed it off as accountant issues. But one night I saw his laptop open. Investments tanking, properties mortgaged, credit lines maxed out. The Caldwell fortune was crumbling. I kept planning, using my company's credit to cover deposits, telling myself Sean would explain after the party. Then came the morning of our Rome flight. Sean was in the shower when his phone pinged. I never checked his phone, privacy was my thing, but something made me glance. A message from Vanessa Hughes, his college girlfriend, the one his parents always wanted him to marry. "Can't wait to see you in Rome. Have you told her yet?" My heart stopped. I opened the thread and saw months of messages. Plans, a future, a baby due in 4 months. I forwarded the screenshots to myself, deleted the evidence, and plastered on a smile as we boarded the flight to Rome. We landed at Fiumicino Airport as the sun painted the city gold. I'd arranged a convoy of Mercedes vans for the Caldwell entourage. Eleanor and Richard, Sean's parents, his sister Melissa and her husband Grant, his brother Thomas and his wife Claire, plus aunts and uncles. Eleanor stepped off the plane and immediately complained, "I thought I specified the hotel cars, Anna. These seem rather generic." I bit my tongue. Explained they were from a top-tier company, but she was already whispering to Richard, shutting me out like always. The Hotel de Russie was perfection. Suites with views of the Spanish Steps, champagne in the lounge, personalized welcome baskets. I'd spent months on every detail, but Eleanor barely glanced at her itinerary before waving it off. "We'll play it by ear," she said, as if my work was just a suggestion. That night, in our suite, Sean's phone buzzed. He stepped onto the terrace, speaking in whispers. "Work," he said when I asked, avoiding my eyes. I knew it wasn't work. The exclusion ramped up fast. At the welcome dinner in Trastevere, I was seated at the far end of the table, away from Sean, while the family traded inside jokes about past Italy trips I wasn't part of. When I mentioned the week's plans, Melissa cut me off. "Oh, we're doing family shopping tomorrow instead of the Vatican tour." Eleanor chimed in, "You'd be bored, dear. Why don't you check on the birthday arrangements?" Every day, they'd vanish on impromptu outings, leaving me with vague notes or no explanation. Whispers stopped when I walked into the hotel lobby. Dinner reservations changed to include old friends who eyed me like I was a puzzle they were trying to solve. On the third morning, I found Sean's briefcase unlocked. Inside were separation papers dated 2 months earlier, offering me a fraction of what I deserved. Worse, there was a script, an actual script, for Sean to announce our divorce at Eleanor's birthday dinner, framing it as mutual. My hands shook as I photographed every page. This wasn't just a divorce, it was a public execution, timed to minimize the Caldwells' social embarrassment. I didn't confront Sean. Instead, I documented everything: bank statements showing offshore accounts, emails about liquidating assets, a note from Eleanor. Once this unpleasantness with Anna is behind us, Vanessa will will be welcomed back properly. The morning of Eleanor's birthday, I overheard her at the hotel concierge desk, her voice sharp through the thin wall. There will be 12 seats, not 13. The seating chart I sent is final. His wife will not be staying for the dinner, a family matter. My blood ran cold. The missing seat wasn't a mistake. It was the centerpiece of their plan to humiliate me publicly, to make it look like I chose to leave. I closed my laptop, walked to the elevator, and started making calls. If they wanted a show, I'd give them one they'd never forget. I arrived at Aroma, the rooftop restaurant, an hour early. The Coliseum glowed amber below, and every detail was flawless. Calligraphed place cards, Eleanor's favorite peonies, a 3-tiered cake that was practically art. Marco, the maitre d', asked if everything was to my satisfaction. Perfect, I said, knowing it was the last event I'd planned for them. Back at the hotel, I slipped into my midnight blue Valentino gown, studying my reflection. 5 years of trying to fit into their world had left me stronger, not broken. I was ready. The Caldwells met in the lobby, Eleanor dripping in Chanel and diamonds, Sean's eyes flickering when he saw me. Maybe guilt, maybe calculation. The drive to Aroma was filled with fake chatter about their day, from which I'd been excluded. As we stepped onto the rooftop terrace, the Coliseum stood like a monument to fallen empires. The family took their seats at the round table I'd specified for 13. I approached my spot and found nothing. No chair, no place card, no acknowledgement. The staff looked uneasy, but no one spoke. Is something wrong? Eleanor asked, her voice dripping with fake innocence. There seems to be a mistake, I said, calm despite the fire in my chest. My place setting is missing. Sean half stood, playing concerned. Oops, guess we miscounted, he said with a chuckle, and the family laughed, a cruel, rehearsed sound. I looked at each of them. Eleanor's triumphant smile, Richard's discomfort, Melissa's glee, Sean's detached curiosity. They expected me to crumble. Instead, I lifted my chin. Seems I'm not family, I said, my voice steady. The smile faltered. I'll see myself out. Sean called after me, Anna, don't be dramatic, but I was already walking away, nodding to the staff who'd witnessed it all. Outside, I sat at a cafe across the street, ordered an espresso, and got to work. In 30 minutes, I canceled everything: the vineyard lunch, the Vatican tour, the Tuscany villa, the Amalfi yacht. Every deposit I'd made with my company's credit went back to my account. Sean's texts started rolling in, annoyed, then panicked. I ignored them. When I walked back into Aroma through the service entrance, Marco met me concerned. I handed him an envelope with proof of payment reversals and instructions to demand a new payment method from the Caldwells. From a discreet alcove, I watched as he approached their table. Richard's face went from confusion to alarm as Marco showed him the tablet. Eleanor clutched her necklace, her composure cracking. Sean stared at his phone, reading my text. All deposits returned, all arrangements canceled. Your family's financial issues are about to go public. Enjoy your caviar. Chaos unfolded. Richard stood, red-faced. Melissa whispered frantically. Sean knocked over his chair, calling me. What the hell are you doing? He hissed when I answered. Seems I'm not family, I said, so I'm not responsible for family celebrations. I laid it all out, the offshore accounts, the divorce script, Vanessa's baby. His silence said everything. Fix this, he begged. I have exactly the idea, Sean, I replied. That was the point. I stepped out from my hiding spot, approaching the table. 12 pairs of eyes, angry, fearful, disbelieving, met mine. How dare you ruin my birthday? Eleanor spat. I smiled. I learned from the best, Eleanor. You planned my humiliation. I just changed the ending. Richard blustered about lawsuits, but I cut him off. Every contract was in my name, and I have copies of everything. Offshore accounts, hidden assets, fraud. The IRS will love it. Their faces went white. I turned and walked away, free. The next morning, I flew back to Boston, first class, using points from Caldwell Vacations. The irony felt good. Word spread fast. Vendors demanded upfront payments, and Eleanor's vintage Bulgari bracelet covered the dinner bill. Back home, I moved out of our brownstone, taking only what was mine. The Boston Globe ran a story on the Caldwells' financial troubles, and their social standing crumbled. Sean showed up at my new apartment, desperate, begging me to come back. This isn't a negotiation tactic, I told him. This is divorce. I had proof he'd hidden assets, and my lawyer was ready. 6 months later, I was planning a wedding on the Amalfi Coast, standing on a terrace overlooking the Mediterranean, phone in hand, vendors at my command. I was happy, not because I'd won, but because I'd lost what I thought I needed. The Caldwells tried to make me small, but that missing chair showed me where I belonged, with myself, my strength, my story. So here's to the moments that break us open, that force us to see our worth. If you've ever had to walk away to find yourself, you're not alone. Raise a glass to that. I did.